Best introduction video in the universe. Thank you very much. Welcome to Monday Night Live, everybody, and welcome, Emille. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? And honestly, that was an epic intro. I felt like I was going to battle.
Yeah, I know. And then it's like, hey, we're here. I need a stage or something.
Yeah.
As it was going, it was like, oh, it's having problems broadcasting to LinkedIn, and then it just looks like it's refreshed. Perfect timing. Okay, everybody in the audience, before I just introduce our lovely guest here, say hello in the comments. We should be able to see them on the right there, Emille, as they come through. I have a question for the audience. So I want you to type into the comments, what were you doing with yourself in your career when you were 29 years old? Let us know in the comments, and you'll see why I asked that question in a minute. Emille, and I'm going to give you my off-the-cuff version of this introduction. Emille came across my attention by a PR specialist that I know and sometimes introduces guests to Monday Night Live, and says, would you like to interview a flight attendant who decided to quit, start a business with no money, and is making seven figures at the age of 29 years old? And I said, is she in Australia? And she said, yeah, it's Melbourne. I said, yeah, of course I would. So Emille started Boracay Skin, and she's got an interesting story as to how she founded the business, which I'm going to get to share with everyone. Are you guys dropping in the chats your careers when you were 29? I know we've normally got a bit of a delay. Just bear with me. I want to make sure that we have got some audience participation here. I'm on my LinkedIn app. Come on, guys. And yeah, we've got people. Come on, guys. Drop it in the comments. Let us know what you were doing. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Want to make sure we've got a live audience. Drop in the chat and say hello, guys. I know there's always a bit of a delay. So, Emille, police officer. Did you hear the police in the background again? I can't hear them. This is noise cancelling. Yeah, they're out to get me. So Emille, would you mind sharing like your version of how you became an entrepreneur, when you realized you were an entrepreneur? Is this your first business? Give us a bit of background as to how you got to the point of starting the business in the first place.
Yeah, so you gave a little background on it, but basically I always wanted to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. I even did an entrepreneurship degree at uni. But it all really began when I went to an island in the Philippines called Boracay. I'm not sure if anyone's been there before, but just picture white sandy beaches, crystal clear waters, absolutely stunning. It's my motherland. And anyways, I took this trip and the locals were selling coconut oil on the beach. And this was back in 2009. So I don't think coconut oil was like a buzzword or trending at the time. And so the locals were selling coconut oil and they were telling me about the benefits for the skin. And at the time I thought, I thought coconut oil was just for cooking. I didn't actually think you could put on your skin. And so they were explaining it to me, and that's how I discovered the benefits of coconut oil. But it wasn't much later until I became a flight attendant a few years later. Now, I don't know if you've ever been on an international flight that's like going on for hours and hours and hours. And by the end, you feel like a shriveled raisin, like you're just so dry. And imagine doing that day in, day out. And so my skin was so dry, and I also had eczema. So that it just, I had my skin was really bad. It was constantly drying out. And so I remembered my time in Boracay where I was using the coconut oil on my skin. I remember how good it was. And so I thought, okay, I'll just try this, because I was, drinking heaps of water and I was trying all these lotions, but I just felt dry still. And then so I tried the coconut oil, and then it really worked well for me. And the other flight attendants were like, oh, your skin's glowing. What are you using? So I kind of told them on my little secret. And then I started making my own body oil. Like I started researching what other plant-based oils would go well with coconut oil. And that's how.
How old were you then?
I would have been in my early 20s. I can't remember exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like probably 24, 25, something like that.
Wow. And you started making your own coconut oil?
I was hand making this product. So when I first started I was hand making it.
Yeah, wow. I didn't even know how you'd start. What did you do? Search it up online?
I look back and I'm so glad I journaled. So I would write down everything that I was thinking of, what I discovered, and Google was my best friend. And emailing people, like just anyone. I didn't know anyone in the business world at all. I mean, like I knew people from my uni degree, but not everyone went on to become an entrepreneur. And so like
you studied entrepreneurship, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. But not everyone became an entrepreneur from that degree. And you know what the funniest thing is? I was probably one of the worst students in my course. Like I wasn't even one of the ones that excelled. I failed a couple of times some of the subjects and I had to do it again. Funnily enough, now I need to mentor the students there. So yeah.
I got asked to go back to my high school and talk about entrepreneurship, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because I got up and I hadn't prepared anything. I thought I was being interviewed. And I said, well, the first thing you need to know is it doesn't matter what grades you get at school. And then the other four speakers backed me up. So it was so interesting when you said you studied entrepreneurship. I didn't know that was even a degree.
It's a Bachelor of Business majoring in entrepreneurship.
That's, I mean, I guess that's awesome. But then, of course, like, again, the bad students are the ones that kick goals, and the guys that did really well end up in a job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's crazy. So you were with Virgin, weren't you?
Yeah, I was with Virgin Australia. Yeah.
And so how long were you with them?
5 years. And honestly, it was an amazing
job. Company to work for, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. I had nothing bad to say about working for Virgin. It's just I wanted to be my own boss. But I also loved traveling. So I thought that's why you see a lot of the travel theme in my business, because it's just I've combined things that I love and I've just turned it into a brand.
Yeah, Emille's Instagram looks like a lot like a travel. It's just, well, I mean, I imagine not traveling during COVID, but you seem to be everywhere.
That's why I haven't been posting as much, because I'm not traveling. So.
Yeah, I know how you feel. I totally had a lot more to post about before COVID. So we've got to the point where you're making your own coconut oil, hand making your own coconut oil. How does one get from there to creating an e-commerce business, marketing that e-commerce business, and turning it into this, like the amount of growth that you must have had in the last 5 years must have been huge.
Yeah, when I actually talk about my story and I listen back to myself and thinking about it and reading the journals that I used to have, it's just crazy. But it's just as fellow entrepreneurs know, it's just a journey, right? And it's like being on a roller coaster. There's no other way to explain it. There's just so many highs and so many lows. And
you started with no money, didn't you?
No, I didn't have any savings at all. I read all these stories about like people saying, "Oh, I had no money, but I had 20 grand in the bank account." And I'm like, I honestly did not have $1 to my name.
Yeah, I understand, but people don't realize what no money means.
Yeah.
So how did you string together the first sort of commercial transaction?
That honestly, stringing it is the correct term. I lived with my parents at the time, so I was saving every dollar. People my age were going out a lot, so they were doing a lot of partying, buying new clothes, and that's totally fine. But I guess I had a different goal in mind, and so how I did it was like I had my big goal, obviously. So when I first launched my business, it was more like, okay, my big goal is to launch my business, but what I need to do in order to get there, and so things like getting a website done. So I put that money aside from my flight attendant wage, and newsflash, flight attendants don't get paid a lot, but I would.
Websites are expensive, e-commerce websites.
Yeah, they were expensive. Yeah. I didn't even know what Shopify was at the time. I think I used WooCommerce to begin with, and so I got
WooCommerce.
Oh, do you? Yeah. I used WooCommerce to begin, and I didn't know how to use anything. I'm not tech savvy, so I had to put away a couple of grand just to set up a website, and then the next thing was to buy the packaging and then the raw materials, and it was just those little steps, and then eventually I got there, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to launch now, and then
Yeah. Listen to this, guys. Like, gets it together at $2,000. Which, by the way, for everyone listening who's a business would know that is a really cheap website. But at the time, that would have been a lot of money. That's like I can't afford for this website not to be good. And then you've sort of done it by the stages. You've sort of created this product. You get, okay, but now I've got to get the website. Then you've got to get in front of customers. You're cold emailing because you don't have a choice. And so you learn all these things about like growth hacking a business that now when you've got a 7-figure business, like, and you see companies spending money on, like, I mean, you must still be like quite careful with what you spend money on because of the experiences you've had, and therefore your margins must be a lot larger.
Yeah, I feel like also when I started my business, and because probably of my age, of how young I was, even though I had an entrepreneurship degree, I think you enter the business world quite naive. And so you kind of a little bit more risk. And as I've gone through my business journey, I feel like I'm a little bit careful of how I spend my money and what we do with it. But in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, let's just do that. And let's do this. Yep, let's just do it. Because you didn't know what would work for your business and what wasn't. And there's no blueprint for what will work for your business because every founder and every business is different.
Yeah, that's right. What's the number one challenge you've had to overcome along the way? Was it starting, or was it something else since then?
I feel like number one challenge, especially for a business that's bootstrapped and didn't really have a lot of money to begin with, is cash flow. Because as you're getting bigger, you need to buy more stock. And now we're in the process of trying to build our team, and it's just all these things. It's a big initial investment, and so that's probably the biggest challenge I've had.
So when you get to a point, and because we've all been there as entrepreneurs, and no one likes to talk about it, but when you're cruising along, you're growing, and then you get to a point, and you're like, oh shit, there's not enough money. There's not enough money at the end of the month to pay all the bills, and something has to be done. You don't know what it is, but it's your responsibility. What do you do in that moment, like, to get yourself in the right headspace to be able to solve the problem?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest mental challenges, is always, like, as you said before, it's like you'll have the bills coming and you know it's coming, but you're like, not enough money's coming in. And sometimes it will happen within your journey. And you always try to plan for that, right? But sometimes you just can't, because
exactly.
As last year showed, like COVID, that's a curveball for everybody. And so for me, it's just like, I just surround myself with the right people, because there's times where it's really hard to really difficult to pull yourself out of that mental hole of doom and gloom. So just surrounding yourself with people and people that can lift you up, and you really just got to find those people that will help you through those times. Yeah,
and then, I mean, I in my experience, they have been that easy to find, but when you do find them, you hold on to them. Like most of the time, it's like if I told any of my friends who weren't business owners, right, and said, hey, I just had a bad day. I've got $20,000 extra worth of things I've got to pay next week, and I don't have the money for it. And then they'd just be like, what? $20,000? Like, it can make it worse. And so you've got to be careful who you share it with, because
these are numbers that, like, for business owners, it's a normal thing, but sometimes that's somebody's salary, and for them it's so shocking once you tell them, and then then you get anxiety, and you're like, why did I even tell this person?
Yeah, exactly. So many people could relate to that. We need to, I think, as entrepreneurs, we need to make the conversation. We just need to bring it more to the forefront and talk about it with each other. But so surrounding yourself with the right people, I've got that. That's that kind of been easy as well with an e-commerce business, even before COVID, was it?
Yeah, in the start, like I said before, I didn't know anybody in the business world, so I was doing a lot of cold emailing, and I found just going to events, now that things are opening up again, but going to events where you can meet like-minded people and trying to meet other entrepreneurs, I found that really helpful for me, because as your friends who are maybe in the corporate world or not business owners, as much as they support you, they don't understand what you're going through. And being a business owner or an entrepreneur, it can be really lonely. And so trying to find people who are doing the same thing, and just even if it's someone that you can bounce off of and be like, you know what, I'm having such a crap day, this is what's going on, and they're like, oh yeah, I went through that the other day too, and then you just feel a little bit better.
Yeah. You say, I've got $20,000 worth of extra bills, and they say, oh, I've got 100,000. You're like, oh shit, well.
We're
all right, well,
yeah,
we've all been through it at least, So you now, okay, so you've got the website built. now you've got somewhere you can sell the product. Are you still doing the distribution? Oh, sorry, still creating it by hand, or
No. Yeah, if we were doing that, oh my
at that
God.
point?
Like,
So when you create the website, the first order you weren't doing by hand, or you find the supplier?
So with my business, it was actually my side hustle for a few years before it really started to take off.
Okay.
Yeah, so by the time I went full time, that's when we started getting it manufactured. But up until that point, it was handmade, so made with love.
Oh, that's awesome. So were you doing it yourself at home, or?
Yeah, and then I eventually got my mum to help me. She still helps me to this day. Like, she's very
How
involved.
good are mums? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's so great. Like, I told her, like, don't get
Shout out
involved,
to mums.
and she ended up getting involved anyway. So
Mums are literally the best. Like, they're always like they're there to do whatever it is that you decide. They're to support you. I mean, well, mine does, but and it sounds like yours does as well. Okay, so I'm just going through the stages of growing a business, so that the people that are out there that are at any stage can get some value. All right, so now you're at a point where you've got a website and you're cold emailing people, and you must have got to a point where you're like, okay, now I need to do some marketing, right? Tell us about the marketing side of things, in terms of like, the trial and error. What did you find didn't work? What did you find you were able to scale?
tried so many things. I think everyone can relate to that. Like, just, should I go on this platform? Should I go on this platform? Should I try this? Oh, that's so expensive. How much is that retainer? And so we were doing all these different things. So when we first started, imagine 2015, Instagram didn't even have video at the time. There was no stories. There was no TikTok. I think Snapchat might have come maybe a couple of years later after that. Yeah. But it's a little bit simpler back then. And so started an Instagram account, 0 followers. And I was just doing things that were basically free to begin with because I didn't have the money. But one of the things I did save up for was PR. And I found that
really
I wouldn't say like you get, like when you do paid advertising, you get immediate results. Like you can track it. With PR, you can't. But PR is so valuable because it builds your credibility as a brand and getting it noticed by the right people. And we got into Urban Outfitters within like 1 or 2 months of launching. And I think it was just because the PR were like just putting it out there and then the right people were seeing it. So I think PR was one of the better investments that I made. And then what really, skyrocketed the brand was really getting into paid ads. We did like organic stuff for years, but it wasn't until we did paid ads and really understood what it meant to retarget your customers, what it meant to, increase average order value, customer retention, customer lifetime value. I think those things are the really important things now as a business to try and make sure everything's tight, because especially with the changes of like iOS 14, how competitive it is on, all the paid advertising platforms.
It must be such a tight margin for you guys with the products.
Yeah, it is. And that's why we focus on customer retention. We've got tens of thousands of customers, but we want them to come back and be happy. And we also want them to keep coming and buying more. And so even though I started with one product, we expanded to like 4 different body oils, but we are going to expand into different things. So which is really exciting. But coming up with new products is also a challenge. So there's a lot of things happening and a lot of juggling going on.
So this is the interesting thing, is everybody wants to hack marketing, but if your retention is good, like it makes it a lot easier to make everything work, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, marketing these days, like a lot of people can just get on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, and everyone goes into an auction really, and that's how paid ads work. And I've seen over the years, like even when I started paid ads only 3-4 years ago, the cost per purchase now, like it's just crazy, right? It's insane. And there's no way you can be profitable if you're always paying to acquire a new customer. And it is really expensive, but that's why having that long-term goal of what you're going to do to try and come back, I think that's what's going to make businesses survive in the long run rather than trying to make a quick buck.
So are you concerned about this iPhone up or the whole cookie thing update, or is it just one of those things which you have to overcome?
I would say that I wouldn't be too concerned, but at the same time, there are businesses that rely on, heavily on paid advertising, and the more competitive it's just going to get more competitive. They're saying commerce is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which means more advertisers, more merchants on board. It's going to be super competitive. And then I honestly think the businesses that know what they're doing in terms of like customer retention and retargeting, not just by using paid ads, but like you need to be like omni-channel really and think about other avenues to reach your customers. They're the ones that are going to do
omni-channel. Omni-channel is a word I hear a lot lately.
Yeah.
Okay. What does omni-channel mean for those people that are listening that may not be as familiar with marketing?
Yeah, so omni-channel is basically we're selling in different avenues. So for example, if we're an e-commerce store, so if you wanted to go omni-channel, it would mean just basically selling on different avenues. So that might be going into retail or going into a marketplace like Amazon. So trying to get into different ways of selling rather than just having one way of selling your product or service.
Yeah. So, I mean, people want to buy different ways, and you sort of allow them to do that, don't you, Marshall? These days, like, I just had a website built, and unless you've kind of integrated it with other platforms, and obviously video is a big deal, it's not really enough just to have a standalone website. Don't you reckon, Marshall? Hey?
Well, yeah, you got to have a website, but also how do you drive traffic to your website?
That's the thing,
and when you think about your ideal customer or your client, they're not just using one platform, right? They're using multiple different platforms, and you've got to hit them at all angles really to try and get their attention. Yeah.
Do you do AdWords as well? Google advertising?
Yeah. So we have accounts with Google, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. There's other platforms that we're wanting to explore as well, but those are the main.
I've got so many questions. This is fascinating. So, have you asked Virgin to be a client yet?
Virgin.
Yeah. Well, I
haven't even thought about it, but someone years ago, someone suggested to me you should try and get the product in the business class, because I used to work in business class all the time. Absolutely. So get it in the little bags, and I'm like, now that you brought it up, I'm like, oh, maybe I should once the airlines go back to normal. Yeah.
So, Mr. Branson, if you're watching, because he tunes in every now and then to Monday Night Live, doesn't he? In fact, it's funny. As soon as I say that, I realise that there's two people in the audience that do know Richard Branson personally. One is a startup that they both won competitions. One was through a charity, and one was a startup competition, and ended up going to his island. So, if you know Richard, could you please ask him to get in touch? We've got a bit of a deal for him.
Oh, I'd love that. I never had the pleasure of meeting Richard. There was so many times that he did like the inaugural flights, and I was never lucky enough to do them. So, that's my dream to meet him one day, actually.
Yeah, I've heard he's got an amazing presence. Like, makes you feel like you're the only person. He's one of my earliest business mentor. In terms of, well, I don't like he's not mentor me personally, but I've always looked up to him. Like, whenever I'm stressed, right, about my little business, I think Richard Branson's got 400 companies and he's on an island. But like, obviously, there's a way to manage this.
He's doing something right.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And what made you decide to leave the Virgin? It sounds like it was a pretty good job, and start your own business. What was it like? Were you uncomfortable there? Was it something that inspired you? Or?
Yeah, so I was still working there for a couple of years whilst I was working on my business on the side. And then it kind of hit me once. I don't know, maybe it was like I wouldn't say it's a midlife crisis, but I was in my mid-20s. I was like, what am I actually doing with my life? What do I actually really want to do? And I was like, don't lie to yourself. What do you want to do? Let's be honest. What's your big dream? And my big dream was to be my own boss and have my own business. And I wanted my little side hustle business to do super well. And I wanted to sell it one day for like X $100 million or whatever. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to work on. And as I had that simple mindset shift, I got an email from work saying like, hey, we're offering leave without pay for 12 months. If you want to go work on something else. Yeah. And they're so generous. They do that, and they take on, you have to apply and say why you're doing it. But they let you do that because they just want you to go have a break. And if you decide to come back, you can have your job. And if you don't, you can just leave. And so that was offered to me, and I got it. And so I was like, okay, it's now or never. I need to make sure in the 12 months I need to make work. And that's how I basically took that on. And then I was like, okay, I need to make this work because like I want to, like I had that fallback, but at the same time I was like, I really want this to work. And that's when, I don't know, it just be like skyrocketed ever since I changed my mindset. I think sometimes you get caught in, it's so hard because I know that feeling of when you're running a business and you're like, when do I leave? When is the time for me to go full time? And no one can answer that for you. And I was really struggling to, is it when I make X amount of revenue, but how much profit do I need to be making? And it's so, I'm not a numbers person. I'm more of, I love being more creative. But anyway, so it was just more of a feeling for me. Like I loved working at Virgin, but I knew deep down, I was like, okay, I'm ready for the next chapter. Like I'd been at Virgin for 5 years and I loved it. I loved all the people that I worked with. I was like, I'm ready to, give this a red hot go. And if it doesn't work out, I can always just come back. But then, I never went back. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Well, there's a couple of things there. First of all, well done. That was a big decision. It's a big jump. So you had a pretty good job. And so, but it's not exactly what I want. And so you've taken a risk, which, kudos to you. That's amazing. And the second thing is like, what company gives their employees 12 months paid leave so that they can go do what they want to do?
It was unpaid. Is unpaid, but
unpaid.
Yeah, it was leave without pay, but you still had your job at the end of the 12 months, so you could come back.
That's how their people so well, don't they? The thing that they've offered that to people, they've gone off and started other businesses, and may not have happened if Virgin didn't give a shit.
Yeah, well, it was one of those initiatives that I think a lot of I don't know if other companies did it, but I thought it was a great initiative because, some people did come back and they were like, you know what, I realized I love being a flight attendant and, XYZ wasn't for me. And at least they tried it because then they come back refreshed and they actually love the job because you get tight. Honestly, you get fatigued, like the level of fatigue that I experienced as a flight attendant. I've never experienced that my whole life. And like, I can't explain it. It's just the mental fatigue as well. And sometimes it's just good to like have a break and come back and be refreshed and realize, okay, sometimes the grass isn't always greener on this other side. But, it's also a good way for if someone, wants to go volunteer. Like we had people that went and volunteered overseas for a whole year. And it's a good way for them to give back because, there's always in the air and they're not able to give their time. So I think it's a great initiative and I think more companies should do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about business mentors? Like obviously you said Google's best friend. Like is there any individuals that inspired you or you've learned from along the way?
I had this question today actually, and I haven't had a mentor myself, but someone that kind of changed my life, I would say, is Tim Ferriss, because I was reading his 4-Hour Work Week. I think a lot of people have read it, but somehow that book, I've read so many business books. I've read Richard Branson's books, but his book, I don't know, it felt really practical. Like you could just read that book and there were practical tips on what you could do. It was kind of like, it was life hacks basically. Like it wasn't.
But it's not, but isn't it, it's a myth, isn't it? No one works 4 hours, do they?
I mean, like, I'm not doing 4 hours in 1 week. But I think like the principles he had in there was the basis of that book was basically, what are you doing with your life, really?
I agree with you, absolutely. He was like, okay, this is where you go to hire somebody, VA, and this is what you write to them. It was very practical.
It was.
That's interesting. That's good advice, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like those airy fairy, like you can do it books. And sometimes I sound like that too, but he was basically like, you can do this and call this number and you can call these people. And it was very interesting because it just got you thinking differently about how you run your life and how you I don't know how you live it, because it was a little bit outside of the box of what people are normal, like used to. And so I think for me, the biggest takeaway for me was like, let's think outside the box, and how do you actually want to design your life? That's basically what I took out of that book, and it changed my life.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And in business, how much do you think percentage-wise is psychology, and how much do you think is tactics and strategies?
I think, honestly, anyone can learn the tactics and strategies. All that information is pretty much readily available. You can listen to heaps of podcasts, read books, but at the end of the day, it's the execution. And so that comes down to the mentality, right? And your psychology. And that's probably one of the biggest things as an entrepreneur. And that's why I mentioned before that you need to surround yourself with the right people, because people can tell you like, go do this, go do that, but if you don't have the strength in you to go do it or execute it, nothing gets done.
Do you have people that told you that you couldn't do what you did, like at the start, or people telling you that you were crazy or not?
No, I don't think people told me I'm crazy, but when I was younger,
nice.
yeah, when I was doing my entrepreneurship degree that I was telling you about, I had the lecturers or tutors or whatever you call them, the professors or whatever, I don't know, but they basically were failing me, and basically they were saying like, you're not really cut out for this. And then after that I was like, oh, maybe I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. And I don't know, it's just sometimes people will tell you can't do things. And I remember even in English at school, she's like, you can't write this essay, and she actually said you can't do it, but then I ended up doing it anyway. I don't know. Sometimes when people say I can't do it, I feel more motivated to show them, no, I can do it. So
wow.
I don't mind when people tell me I can't do it, because then I'll be like, no, I'll show you.
So if somebody's watching that's trying something they believe in, but they've not had any external success with it yet, and their friends are telling them that maybe they should give up and they should try something else, what would you say to them?
Honestly, it's all within reason too, but I think at the end of the day, the only person's opinion that matters is really yours, because it's your life, it's your business, and it's not, I mean, whatever your friend's saying or whoever's saying this, they're not going to be paying the bills at the end of the day. So it's whatever works for you, and if you believe in it and no one else does, well, then that's fine. I feel like I personally didn't get, like, from friends, I didn't get the biggest support. Like, they did support me at the beginning, but then after a while, like, the support wasn't maybe there as much as I wanted. But that's because I know that I have a different mindset to my friends. So it's not that I would hate on them. It's just more like we're different people. And I think that's what kind of separates you from the others, right? And that's why you're an entrepreneur, because you are a little bit different. You're a small minority of people that are willing to do this.
Wow. Yeah, so good. I can't believe you're 29 years old. That's amazing. Well done. I'm so impressed that you managed to work all that out. It's fantastic. Yeah, really impressed. So what are your goals for the business? You mentioned that you had dreams initially of X $100 million. And I'm sure you've defined what the X is. What is your goals these days?
So the business, obviously the goal right now is just growing. We're just trying to get new products to the market, listening to what our customers want. The next step is most likely getting into retail. So we are in the process of thinking about who do we want to partner with, and how we want to distribute it, and which markets we want to enter. Our biggest market right now is the US. So that's something that we're working on, and potentially the EU. But the end goal is, for me, I mean, I love what I'm doing. I love e-commerce. I love being in the beauty space. But one day I do want to help others that, might want to start their own business and don't know how to, because I remember that feeling. And so I want to help those people. Maybe if the timing is right, or we have the right buyer, I'd be willing to have that conversation of selling my business. But at the moment, it's just me trying to grow it.
Right. Okay. So you would consider an exit, and then what? You perhaps start another business.
Yeah, maybe perhaps start another business, just chill for a little bit. But I still want to be involved in business. Like, I think, as I mentioned before, when I was a little girl, I've always been interested in business, and that's something I probably will keep doing until my legs
So,
fall off.
yeah, so then I must have missed that bit. So when you were a child, like, did you experiment with any businesses? Did you sell lemonade? Sell lemonade after the rugby matches?
Yeah, I didn't do that, but I remember like I had this like school diary, and at the back of my school diary, I didn't know what a vision board was, but it was basically a vision board, and I was like writing.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna be a boss. I'm gonna have this pension, and just I would role play with my little brother. I would be the cheer, and I'd have my own little shop with the fruit and stuff. And so that's something I always wanted to do. I just didn't know what kind of business I want to do. And then I was really disheartened when I wasn't doing well at my entrepreneurship degree. But I think because I just really wanted to do it, and it was something that stuck with me. And when I was honest with myself, I was like, I just need to give it a go. And if this person can do it, why can't I? That was kind of my mentality. So then I just gave it a shot. And I think I just never got off that train. Like, it's just been going, and I just never got off.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yes, and you've been back to that university, haven't you? To speak, is that what you said? You've been back to,
yeah, they invite me to mentor the students. So
so we're like, fuck you guys, I did it.
It was funny because the subject I failed was actually called applied entrepreneurship. So it was basically telling you you can't be an entrepreneur, you don't know what you're doing. I failed it, and then I just passed. So I had to do it again, and I just passed. And then so a few years later, they were the ones that reached out to me, and they're like, oh, we've seen what you've been doing, we'd love to get you to mentor the students and help them with that subject. And every student I've mentored have gotten high distinctions. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. I mean, good on the university for realizing, like they need entrepreneurs that are actually entrepreneurs to come in and talk to the students.
Yeah, because sometimes they did have people that come in that they were entrepreneurs too, but I think entrepreneurship isn't very defined. Like, I would say it's not a black and white kind of subject like medicine or something. So sometimes someone that doesn't seem like an entrepreneur, like the ones in my course that seems like entrepreneurs, work in the corporate world now. So sometimes it's the ones that you least expect that have the potential to become an entrepreneur. Or maybe I was just at the age that I hadn't realized it yet, or I just needed a bit more life experience.
Yeah, anyone could do it. Like I don't think that necessarily a business owner is an entrepreneur. I think that somebody that can create something out of nothing is an entrepreneur. Like you think about all the great entrepreneurs out there in the world. If they had a great idea and no money, it wouldn't bother them one bit. They would, because there's so many different ways to raise the money. Who cares how we do it? We'll figure it out. But there's always so many other possibilities before you go, oh, no, that's not possible.
Yeah. So actually, there's a couple of when I first started, I didn't know any of these things. So if anyone's listening, for e-commerce, there's companies called like Wayflyer that can help you fund your business.
Okay.
Yeah. I think another one is like Clearbank or something like that. But they basically help fund e-commerce businesses, and it's not like a bank. So I don't know the ins and outs of it, but this was just stuff I didn't know, and I honestly thought it was either like I needed to raise money from like investors or just ask friends and family, and I didn't have either of those options, or like go to the bank. I couldn't go to the bank either, so I was like,
what a blessing, though. Yeah.
I was just like, well, I'll just save the money that I have and just do it slowly. And I think my journey took longer than when there's overnight successes, but I mean, it allowed me to learn. So it was okay.
It seems slow to you, but you've done it exceptionally.
It's like a lifetime for me when I think about it. Like 6 years in hindsight is not long, but for me, it feels like it was so long ago, and I was a totally different person when I first started.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because taking that risk and after being in that university degree where the external validation wasn't really there, and then having achieved a success, and now you're getting asked to speak on Monday Night Live. You've made it, right? But you must feel incredibly proud and confident. How's it changed you as a person?
I think I honestly feel like I've just grown into this woman I don't recognize, or a woman that I wouldn't even dream of becoming. But it's just because of all the experiences I've had leading up to this point. And I wouldn't change anything about what I've done. It's just, this is how my journey's looked. And I've just totally changed. Like, I just read my journals and I'm like, I had no idea what I probably don't know what I'm doing now, but I really didn't know what I was doing. So, and I honestly think that's just a bit of a blessing in disguise too, because sometimes when you're a bit naive, you're more willing to go and do things. And I think if I had the knowledge now, trying to start another business, I would be more hesitant, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Do you still journal today?
Not as good, because I do it all digitally and I have no idea where I saw them. But I loved putting pen to paper. That was really good.
Well, because I think what you do, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, I posted about this last night on Instagram, compare themselves to other people, right? And it becomes a very risky place from mental health perspective. But just by the act of doing those journals, I can see you comparing yourself to who you were 2-3 years ago, which is really healthy. Like, it's really good to look at how far you've come, and build your. It builds a lot of security, self-esteem, confidence, and which is a very resourceful state to be in. Was that intentional, or do you think that was just by accident?
No, it was because I just needed to know what was going on in my brain, and sometimes I would have ideas at like 2 a.m. I need to write it down somewhere. Or sometimes I was on a plane, like serving chicken or beef, and I'm like, oh, I've got this idea for like marketing. I needed to write it down instantly, otherwise I'd forget. So that was the reason I had this. But it's good to just read back, because, as you said, it's a reminder of what your mental state was at the time, and like you can see how far you've come, because it's so easy to forget when you're running your business and you're so in that cycle, right? And you forget how far you've come, and it's a good reminder.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. Well done. I'm very, very glad we did this this interview. What's something that I should have asked you that I haven't yet?
I feel like you've covered everything, but if anyone's listening that's doing e-commerce, I think people think e-commerce is easy because there's so many these gurus out there that are trying to sell like courses and saying drop shipping's easy and you can make thousands of dollars in a day, but honestly it's hard work. The only thing I could suggest is just keep at it, because it might not work now or it might not work tomorrow, but eventually you will get there. And that was the case for me, because I was doing my business as a side hustle for 3 years. And I was at that point where I was like, okay, I either just keeping on being a flight attendant, or I really just keep trying. And then I just chose to keep trying, and then it worked out. So
awesome. Yeah. And so a lot of people go the other way and they give up, and then like, it's not the end of the world, but you did settle. You're not going to get a second chance at life.
No, you don't. You just get one shot and that's it. So you might as well make the most of it.
Yeah, which you've certainly done. Thanks so much for being on Monday Night Live. Can you make me a promise? I would like when you get Virgin as a client, can you please send me a message?
I definitely
will get you back on.
I will try and get you one of those business class packs.
I think that's the full story, and then you write the book, and then
full circle.
You sell the business to Elon Musk, and okay. All right. Well, thanks for being here. I know it's late in Melbourne. Guys, stick around. I've got a couple of updates I want to share with you, but we'll say goodbye to Emille. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, by the way, before you go, find Emille on Emille Mendoza on Instagram. That's the best platform for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I use Instagram a lot. So LinkedIn is kind of something I'm trying to get into. That's why I'm trying to get pointers of you. But
Instagram, they're on there.
Yeah,
I've seen them.
Instagram is something that I've been using for years and years. It's just a platform I'm comfortable with. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, go and follow Emille. I'm sure you'll find her posts inspiring. Follow her journey. Surround yourself with people that are crushing it in business. And if there's any young female entrepreneurs out there that are wondering whether or not it's possible, you've just found out that it certainly is. Thanks for being here, Emille.
Thank you so much.
That was awesome. How inspiring. Wow. Oh, thanks for sticking around, guys. We've just got about 5 or 10 minutes of a couple of things I want to share with you before we wrap up. And I don't use a notebook in my office. I use a whiteboard because I like big stuff, and these are my notes. So I'm going to pop them down here. Okay, so the CEO. What's going on there? The CEO sleep out. If you've known me for longer than a year, you'll know that I do the CEO sleep out every year to raise money for the homeless. When I started my business, I was getting evicted from, and I quit my job, and I had no money. So I was literally like, it was a reality for me that I could have to spend some time without a house, while I figured that out. And so I think it's quite an easy, it's not that difficult to find yourself in that position to be homeless. But what concerns me the most, and which is why I've done the CEO sleep out each year, because I did it the first time. I raised $3,000 or something, and I thought, I'm not really making much of a difference doing this but I thought, yeah, but if you do it every year, like when you add that up, it is making quite a big impact. So I made the decision to do it every year about 4 or 5 years ago, and the number of children under the age of 12 that are homeless it's going like this in Australia. It's growing all the time. There's the statistic last year was there's 17,000 kids under the age of 12 sleeping on the street during winter, and it was 12,000 the year before when I did it. So it's increased from 12 to 17,000 in a year. So it's a big growing problem. Obviously, these kids don't really have a say in whether or not they're having to sleep on the street. So I think it's our responsibility as business leaders to do so. It's something that we should not really tolerate. Like, you're telling me, like, these kids who didn't, innocent, did not make any of the decisions that led to the fact that they don't have a roof over their head, have to sleep on the street, and we're drinking wine and going out to dinner. I think it's our responsibility to fix that problem. So I do the CEO sleep out every year. I don't do every charity thing, but this is one that I believe in, and I encourage if you are a CEO or you work for a CEO to nominate them. Last year, because of COVID, we had to do the sleep out in the backyard or our balconies, and I thought, that's not that rough. But what I decided to do was go live while I was out there. So I went live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook for a few hours, and we raised more money than I have done in the previous years. And this year is out in the street for real. But I'm going to go live again, and I'm going to be able to talk to all the other people that are doing the CEO sleep out as well, which is going to be epic. My goal is to raise $10,000 this year. And so I would love your support with donations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the link to donate into the chat, and every time somebody donates, I'm going to be giving them a massive shout out on social media. Actually, you know what? I actually I have in my CRM, I have a box that says CEO sleep out donation, and I always make sure that if there's ever anything that we can offer, like free tickets to, or VIP upgrades to, or we want someone to beta test like a new product, I'll always make sure I take care of those people, because I think the secret to living is giving, and these guys are legends for supporting the CEO sleep out. All right, so next week on LinkedIn is a free webinar on I think it's 5, but it could be 4. 5 strategies for LinkedIn lead generation in 2021. I feel like I had to do this because there was a few updates on LinkedIn, and one of them limited the number of connection requests you can send per week, right? And if you weren't reaching that limit, you think to yourself, well, it probably doesn't. It's not that big a deal, but it's actually changed how effective a lot of stuff is on LinkedIn in terms of what connection requests work the best, whether or not you should send private messages. LinkedIn events has completely changed the game. LinkedIn polls is awesome. LinkedIn groups is going to be the next thing, but everything's changing. The crazy thing is, if you did my training, LinkedIn training with Nathaniel Bibby, the man, no, you got all these awards and stuff. But if you did my training a year ago, 50% of what you're doing is wrong. That's how fast it's changing. It's blowing my mind. So anyway, this webinar is completely free. It's so on LinkedIn, you just search for, I don't know, it's an event, LinkedIn Strategies 2021. Please do come along. It's not going to be recorded, so you have to be there on the day. And I've got all this research we did. So we did 3 months worth of research on. It was over 1 million LinkedIn posts to see which ones get the most engagement. So like, how are they structured? What are they talking about? What are the topics? What are how are they written in terms of the language? What are the trends and insights that would be useful for marketers and businesses? And I'm going to give that report to everyone that attends the wedding. The webinar as well. And in the process, I really wanted to try out LinkedIn Events' new feature, and I can tell you right now, LinkedIn Events has raised the bar. You don't need to have LinkedIn Live to use it. LinkedIn Events is looking phenomenally good. It looked like it could take over Eventbrite. I'm really impressed with it. I want to give a shout out to Chris, who's been so kind to provide us with some lovely red wine. Chris was driving earlier. Chris, are you still here? Chris Holland, my man. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Like Ian says, biggest problem is that CEOs get more exposure than the homeless kids. Well, the homeless kids, though, I mean, yeah, they don't need exposure. Well, I see what you're saying. This is the thing, right? Like I did speak to, how much was I'm allowed to share? I did speak to one of the charities about doing a collaboration, and the whole thing didn't work because of this whole privacy thing, which I really thought like sharing their stories would help people donate. And apparently they're more concerned with privacy. So, they're the experts. The first time, this is an interesting story. The first time I did the CEO sleep out was Melbourne, not colder than Perth. And we're at the convention center, out the front of the convention center. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, like I'm still trying to sleep. I'm not used to sleeping, on the street, obviously. Protesters come in. They're like banging drums and stuff. Homeless people protesting against what we were trying to do, saying, you guys don't understand, you CEOs, blah, 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 blah. We raised millions and millions of dollars around the country. But, I mean, I understand. But I think it was a minority of the homeless community. And because the key is not just money, right? Like it's being able to move them into like sustainable housing, sustainable careers. I was walking down Chapel Street once, and I was running short on cash. Like I was down to I didn't have much money in my pocket at all. I think I was waiting on a client payment or something. And this homeless guy comes up to me and he said, hey mate, have you got any money? And I said, what do you want the money for? And he said, I'm hungry. And I said, well, I'm actually just going to get something to eat. Do you want to come with me? So we go to the sushi place and we sit down, and he proceeds to tell me how he had like a house in Toorak, two-story house, 4 children and a wife. And that was probably 2 or 3 years ago, prior to us having that lunch. And then he was just telling me about his life, and it just sounded like such a privileged life. And then one thing led to another, and the wife left, and he lost the kids, and before he knew it, he wasn't able to put a roof over his head, and was walking up and down Chapel Street asking people for money. Anyway, so that I bought him some sushi and moved on, and then for like 6 months after that, I think every time I'd go to Chapel Street, I'd see this guy, and he'd be like, "Hey Nat, how are you, mate? Lunch today?" I'd say, "Oh, not today, buddy." But like if you talk to some of these people, right, like you can kind of see it's not that difficult to imagine that it's possible that each of us could end up there. And a lot of people have this judgment around like why people are homeless and that they should get jobs and all that kind of stuff. And sure, like there's some people that do need a kick up the arse, and there's some people that are there by choice. But there's also a lot of people that don't want to be homeless, and I think if you want to just rule that conversation out altogether, these kids, 17,000, and it's probably higher this year, 17,000 they're under the age of 12. They are completely innocent, and it's going to impact their whole life. They've got a lot to overcome before they can get on par with kids that have had housing. And I'm just doing my little bit to raise some money. So please donate, support me, and I will do my best to provide you value. All right, one or two more things. Sorry, for those people, I'll do the Perth thing last because I know you're not all in Perth. I'm looking for more guests for Monday Night Live. So if you know of an entrepreneur that has an inspiring story, or a marketer that knows how to growth hack different platforms, or somebody that's just incredibly funny, I'm looking for guests for Monday Night Live. Who I'd really want is somebody that's doing well with LinkedIn content. A LinkedIn content creator that you think is doing really well would be awesome to interview. It doesn't have to be in the marketing industry, it could be in any industry, but somebody that you think is doing a great job of sharing stuff on LinkedIn. So if you know of anyone that would be suitable, or you'd like to come on to Monday Night Live, please let me know in the comments, and we will see if we can schedule you in. If you're in Perth, I want you to go check out our meetup page. What's it called? Entrepreneurs with Attitude. We've got several events coming up live in person. There's a YouTube marketing event, which is going to be epic, which is, I think it's like next week or maybe a week after. It's next week, I'm pretty sure. And then there's the 7 steps to LinkedIn influence, which is going to be massive this year. It's going to be huge, and it's a free event. So make sure you come along to the 7 steps. So all you need to do is go to meetup.com/in-Perth. In Perth. You're looking for your comedian. Let's see. Here we go. We got some comments coming through. What do you think is more effective, sponsored ads versus Sales Navigator for B2B? Look, if you're going to pay attention to the leads and answer them and follow them up, Sales Navigator is the way to do it. Sponsored ads is going to, like, it'll fill up some lead magnet funnel, and then you've got to convert them. Sales Navigator as a relationship-based tool, there's nothing better, for lead generation. And it's not just Sales Navigator. You've got to use it properly, but and be active on it. And there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing that. But like LinkedIn, if you're a salesperson that is interested in generating their own leads, LinkedIn is where you should be spending all your lead generation time at the moment. In a year, will not be as easy as it is right now. It's fucking crazy. 2 years ago, I was telling people we can connect with people on LinkedIn who are a certain job title, certain industry, and a certain location, and we can connect with it as many as we want. It's a social database, and you guys are sitting there not connecting with anyone. And now LinkedIn's just introduced a weekly invitation limit. You can't send more than 100 a week, right? And so, like, this is bound to happen. And even if you could send more, it'll be monetized. Personal profiles will be monetized. It will all be monetized. It's crazy the amount of revenue that LinkedIn's been missing out on, while we've all been growing our networks. Like, on Instagram, you can't be like, target retail CEOs. If they find you and they follow you, maybe they search that hashtag, then great. But on LinkedIn, it's like, okay, retail CEOs, Perth, there's a list of them. Send them all connection requests. As they connect, more people show up in the second degree network. Like, it's phenomenal, the opportunity that we have. I think it's probably got a year to go. If you're a B2B and you're not proactive on LinkedIn on a daily basis, you're really missing out on a big opportunity. I've been in marketing for 20 years. Biggest opportunity I've seen to grow a business and become an industry leader without any money. Like, I'm sure you could do it on AdWords and spend a lot of money, and you will be able to achieve that. But like, as a founder of a small business that started with no money, no employees, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Obviously, our guest today, like, she's in B2C, and she found the same thing with Facebook ads and has just scaled the shit out of that. So it's about finding how you can growth hack a business, but it is about finding that, like, lead tap that you can turn on and off. So we've said Monday Night Live creators. I'm just looking at my whiteboard and the Perth meetup group. That's a wrap, guys. Have a great week in business. We did it in an hour. Ian, great comment. Legend. I'm looking forward to seeing how many $1,000 you donate. I'm joking. Like, every little bit helps, even if it's like $5, $10. It all makes an impact. It encourages other people to vote as well. And I'll be giving you a big shout out to say thank you on social media. This is the first time I've started promoting the CEO Sleep Out. So I appreciate you kicking it off for me, my Monday Night Live legends. And yeah, have a great week in business. You don't have to be perfect to be awesome. Good night.